What up, though, everybody, and welcome to Lions Nation Unite. My name is Spencer Raxter of the Woodward Heavyweights. Appreciate you being with me. Make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Also, drop a follow on Instagram, on X, on Facebook for Lions Nation Unite. And if you want the best merch in the game, like this Packers Suck shirt, all you got to do is go to lionsnationunite.com, and you got the best merch available now. Lions Nation Unite is a platform created by Herman to bring different content creators of all walks of life, whether you're in Australia, whether you're in the UK, whether you're here in Michigan, to talk about the Detroit Lions, to bring them together and to bring you guys the best news possible when it comes to your beloved Detroit Lions. Now, again, thank you for being with me. I am Spencer Raxter of the Woodward Sports, and I got a lot to talk about today. Now, Brian Branch sat down with the Detroit Free Press, and he had some thoughts about this defense next year and what this defense is going to look like for the Detroit Lions next year. Now, here are some of the things that he said in this article from the Detroit Free Press. He said, we went through the ups and downs. We fought together in tough games. We have been in a game where it depended on us to win. So it just makes everybody buy in. Once you have a group that is bought in and has gone through trials and tribulations, we feel invincible. I feel like we're going to be better than last year, he explained. We're hungry, and I feel like that's going to separate us. Our chemistry is on a whole nother level. Now, that is what Brian Branch had to say. Just a few words that he shared with the Detroit Free Press about the Detroit Lions defense next year. And I mean, I hate to say that I believe him and that I stand with him because it makes me feel like a slappy, but this Lions defense has to be better than it was next year, especially at the end of the season. When you look at the bare bones crew that the Lions were putting out there on defense, where they had over 11 players on the IR at the end of the season, that was not a defense performing up to its highest capabilities. That was not a defense, even given its full array of weapons, to perform at its highest level. You saw last year the Detroit Lions defense finished top 10 overall in the NFL, but when Aiden Hutchinson and the majority of those guys were healthy at the beginning of the year, they were performing as a top 5 unit in the league. Now, I know that this team is not going to be playing the likes of the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans again next year, and you're playing some real deal offenses with some real deal quarterbacks on the road. When you look at the Bengals and you look at the Chiefs and the Eagles and all of these teams that you have to, the Ravens, you have to go on the road and play elite level quarterbacks. It's not going to be easy for this defense, but I stand with Brian Branch, and I agree with Brian Branch that this defense should be better next year. And I think that, oddly enough, them going through what they did last year with the team falling apart, the injuries just riddling that defense, guys stepping up, guys believing in themselves and the people around them more, and still having success, I think will strengthen their resolve and will strengthen that unit altogether. Now, I do have a list of 5 things that I think are extremely important for Brian Branch's sentiment to echo true, for Brian Branch's words of this defense being invincible, and being better than last year. I think there is a litany of things that need to happen for that to go well. And we'll start with number 1. I think it's the most obvious, and that's Aiden Hutchinson. This defense is only going to go as far as Aiden Hutchinson pushes them. He is going to solidify himself as a top 5 edge rusher in the NFL next year. He is going to solidify himself as what we all already know he is, which is that blue chip pass rusher. Aiden Hutchinson is the best player on your defense. Aiden Hutchinson could be the best player on your team. Not named Penei Sewell, of course, but him and his presence makes everybody else's job easier, because Aiden Hutchinson is the type of talent that offenses have to game plan for. That offenses have to say, oh shit, Big 97's going to be over there causing hell for us all game, so we have to make sure we have him accounted for. We have to make sure we're sending 2 guys his way. And that makes the rest of the defensive line get easier. That makes the rest of those guys get hungrier and be able to get after the quarterback. So I do believe the first and most important reason this defense can do what Brian Branch said and be better than next year is the return of Aiden Hutchinson and him to perform at that all-pro, all NFL type level we saw him playing at, at the beginning of the year last year. Aiden Hutchinson coming back is truly the most important move, the most important player acquisition that any team in the NFL is going to make over the offseason is the Detroit Lions getting a healthy Aiden Hutchinson back, because he is an MVP candidate when he's healthy and performing at the top of his game. He showed last year that he is up there when you look at the likes of a Micah Parsons or a TJ Watt or a Max Crosby or any of those guys, including Myles Garrett. You're going to have to include Aiden Hutchinson in that conversation. I think next year when he comes back healthy, he's going to be around 20 sacks on the season, and he's going to show this team that they missed him a whole lot. Now, I think the second most important thing to happen for the Detroit Lions defense to be better than it was last year, which is what Brian Branch says they will be, and I'm not going to say Brian Branch is wrong because that guy's a dog, and I love Brian Branch. But another thing that needs to happen for them to truly be better than they were last year is they need to re-sign Alex Anzalone. Alex Anzalone, the captain of that defense. Alex Anzalone, the best linebacker you have when it comes to coverage and people coming out of the backfield or tight ends. Alex Anzalone, the best linebacker you have when it comes to getting to the quarterback and sacking the quarterback. And he's the most instinctual player on the field, maybe aside from Brian Branch himself. Alex Anzalone is an extremely important part of this defense, and I do believe that Jack Campbell is going to take that step forward next year and truly be looked at as one of the elite linebackers in the NFL. But I think he only does that if he has I think he only does that if he has Alex Anzalone alongside him. Alex Anzalone is a perfect complement to what Jack Campbell is as a linebacker, and I think those two guys playing together could push for best linebacker tandem in the league next year. You've got to re-sign Anzo. You've got to bring him in here, not only for the team's success, not only for this team to be what Brian Branch said and the defense to be better than it was last year, but for Jack Campbell and his development. Alex Anzalone is an extremely pivotal part of this defense. Like I said, when it comes to covering players out of the backfield or tight ends in the middle of the field, and when it comes to getting to the quarterback and getting the quarterback on the ground, no linebacker does that better on your team than your captain, Alex Anzalone, for this defense's success and for Jack Campbell's succession into starhood as a linebacker. You need Alex Anzalone on this field, and you need that contract to get done. Number 3 on my list of things that this defense needs to do to make sure it's better than last year, like Brian Branch said they will be, is to make sure they've got that interior defensive line locked down until Aleem McNeil gets back. Now, we know we're going to be without Aleem McNeil for the beginning of the season, and it's looking like it's going to push to mid-November, maybe even to Thanksgiving, without the big guy in the middle. Now, Aleem McNeil is paid like a top 10 defensive tackle in the NFL. Aleem McNeil, when healthy, performs like a top 10 defensive tackle in the NFL. The Detroit Lions are going to need to make sure that that position is good to go to start the season. Like I said, you're probably not going to get Aleem McNeil back until over halfway through the season. Now, you drafted Tyleik Williams to be a guy on your team long-term. You re-signed a guy in Levi Onwuzurike who showed you last year that he could stay healthy, and when he's healthy, he does good things on the field. And you've got a nose tackle combination of DJ Reader and Roy Lopez. That is very well and good. That is a very good defensive line rotation, but they're going to need to step up, because the thing that really makes that interior defensive line great is when Aleem McNeil is playing. So without having him on the field, you're going to need guys like Levi Onwuzurike, like the rookie Tyleik Williams, and like a guy I think some people are forgetting about, the pick out of LSU last year, Mekhi Wingo. I think him being back can do good things for the Lions' interior pass rush. I think he's got a burst that's unmatched even with athletes of his caliber, and he can be a good rotational piece. Now, they're going to have to all outperform who they are. I don't expect anybody to come in there and to play like Aleem McNeil has played in a Lions uniform just yet. Tyleik Williams, I've got high hopes for him. but you're going to need to make sure that that interior defensive line spot is held down in the absence of the big fella. Now, the fourth thing I think that is extremely vital to this defense being better than what it was last year. And Brian Branch said they feel invincible, they feel chemistry, they're feeling good, and they're going to be better than they were last year. And I think a huge part of that is the evolution of Terrion Arnold as the cornerback one on this team. Now, I don't expect him to go out there out of camp and be that cornerback one lockdown, follow a guy around type player. But when it comes down to the meat of the season, when it comes down to the end of the year and you're making the push to the playoffs, I do believe Terrion Arnold is going to be performing as the best cornerback on this team. Terrion Arnold showed a lot of great things in his rookie year. He showed he was in the hip pocket of a lot of receivers. He showed the ability to make adjustments mid-season, where at the beginning of the year, he was getting called and flagged and called for all of these holdings and pass interferences, and that really cleared up very early on, where you did not see him really struggle with that as the season went on. He needs a few things to turn him from a good cornerback, which he was last year. He was a cornerback 2 on a 15-win team. That's a good cornerback in the league. He needs to work on his closing speed, and he needs to work on his ability to read the wide receiver's hands or the quarterback's eyes and know when that ball's coming in to either get a hand up or get hands on the ball. These are things that I expect him to learn. These are things that it takes defensive backs a couple of years to learn in this league, and I believe Terrion Arnold is ready to make that jump. We saw him last year, like I said, be in the hip pocket of receivers all the time. It seems like he was just one step away from making a lot of great plays, breaking up a lot of passes, and even getting his hands on some balls. I expect Terrion Arnold to make that jump next year. And like Brian Branch said, I expect him specifically to be a hell of a lot better than he was last year. And it's not saying anything bad about his season last year, but that jump from year 1 to year 2 for a cornerback in the NFL can be something of magic. And I think if this Detroit Lions defense truly wants to be better than it was last year, like Brian Branch is saying, Terrion Arnold taking a jump as a cornerback is a huge factor in that. And finally, number 5, the fifth thing I think needs to happen for the Detroit Lions defense to be better than it was last year, as Brian Branch is predicting. And that's for Kelvin Shepard to be Kelvin Shepard. We know that he runs this team. When you look at this defensive scheme, they love him. This defensive team, when you look at this defensive unit, they love Kelvin Shepard. They would die for Kelvin Shepard. Every single one of them has good things to say about him. When you hear what his linebackers have to say about him, when you hear what Aiden Hutchinson has to say about him, because Kelvin Shepard was working with the outside linebackers when he was first brought into this team, when they first drafted Aiden Hutchinson. He has a good camaraderie with a lot of these guys. He was being groomed for this position by Aaron Glenn and Dan Campbell. He already has experience leading the defensive room, leading these guys in meetings and different things, because Aaron Glenn was letting him do it last season. There is a lot of faith in Kelvin Shepard from Dan Campbell. When you look at a guy who is in the heat of a Super Bowl window with the Detroit Lions, and he appoints a guy as young as Kelvin Shepard in this league, in this coaching staff, with the little experience he does as a first-time defensive coordinator for a team that's looking to win a Super Bowl next year, that is a lot of faith in your young DC. And I believe Kelvin Shepard is going to live up to the bill. I think he is going to be a damn good coach, because when you look at everybody that's talked about him, whether it be Sean Payton, Aaron Glenn, Dan Campbell, or Steve Spagnuolo, they talk about Kelvin Shepard like he's the smartest guy in the room. And I know that saying has some bad connotations for it. You don't want to act like you're the smartest guy in the room. But when you actually are the smartest guy in the room. That helps a lot. And Kelvin Shepard is in those conversations with guys who defensively I hold in a lot of regard when I talk about Steve Spagnuolo and Aaron Glenn. Obviously, Dan Campbell and Sean Payton, more offensive-minded coaches. But with them being around Kelvin Shepard, they know what he's all about. I think that these are some things that need to happen. I think that these are some things that are going to happen when the Detroit Lions make that jump next year and their defense is truly showing out. Now, when it comes down to statistics and just straight up yards per game or points per game, this defense might not be looking as good as it was last year, because the level of competition they're going to be playing is on another another plane of existence than it was last year. I already talked about all the names: the Mahomes, the Burrows, the Hurtses, the Saquons, the Lamar Jacksons. These are the guys that you're going to be facing on almost a week-to-week basis next year. So this defense definitely going to have its plate full, trying to put up some great stats. But I believe if all of the things I said come true, if you look at Aiden Hutchinson coming back like he didn't miss a beat, if you get the deal done with Anzalone, if you have that interior defensive line sorted out at least until Ali McNeil gets back, if Terrion Arnold makes that jump that we expect him to in year 2, and if Kelvin Shepard goes out there and proves Dan Campbell's faith in him right, this defense will be invincible, as Brian Branch says. And they're going to be better than they were last year. Those are a lot of ifs, but those are also just the trajectories of these players. These are also just the natural progression of what these guys are doing. Aiden Hutchinson evolving as a player in this league, still a very young player, even though coming off of a devastating injury. Terrion Arnold being a guy who's looking to make that jump from year 1 to year 2. Tyleik Williams looking to show Brad Holmes that he drafted him in the first round for a reason. And Alex Anzalone trying to come in here once he gets his deal and prove that he's worth every penny. And not to forget their fearless leader, Kelvin Shepard, proving that he's ready to take over for Aaron Glenn and be a legitimate defensive coordinator in the NFL. Now, I know that's a lot to happen, but it's not easy winning a Super Bowl. And from a defense that was battered and bruised last year, the number one thing that needs to happen is they just have to stay healthy. And I think they got a chance at being better than they were last year. Appreciate you tapping in. Make sure you smash that like button. I'm Spencer Raxter of Woodward Sports. This is Lions Nation Unite, and we'll see you guys next time.